Mr. Chair.
I call David Tandem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou. Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to take a call on this bill. It's a piece of legislation we have opposed and will continue to. I've seen it described recently as an ideological solution in search of a real-world problem, and I do think that it basically sums it up. This clause does have the gist of the bill. The essence of this bill, 229A, that says a student may not be obliged to be a member of an association. And that brings to me an immediate issue, a problem, and it's reinforced in 229CA, which I call the free rider clause in this bill. It says non-members are not obliged, that is, non-member students or other students who are not members of an association may not be obliged to pay for services which are provided generally for a student body at the institution. That is a free rider clause. That says that where services are provided to everybody, where people cannot be excluded from access to those services, then non-members, people who are not paying their way, will be able to enjoy those services. So like many other New Zealanders, and indeed people in this House, I'm a member of the Automobile Association. So in the event on a wet morning my car fails to start, I phone and a nice man in a van comes and gets me a mobile. Wouldn't it be odd if my neighbour, who happened not to be a member of the association, could ring and get that same service for free? And this is essentially the situation being set up here. There are many services provided by student associations which are not exclusive, which are available to all student members in terms of facilities, cafes, orientation week activities. Any student may approach those, and I would love to hear from the proponents for this bill an explanation of how that is fair, that some students will pay while other students who choose not to pay will also be able to enjoy those benefits. That is not fair, it is unjust, and it is a reason why the student associations will be weakened. Many students confronted with very high fees and fees which are increasing year by year, cost of study, inadequate resourcing, inadequate funding for texts and so on, are going to be confronted with rather a difficult ethical dilemma. Do they pay their student association fee and then rightly and reasonably get access to that range of services, or do they choose a free ride on the back of their fellow students? And sadly we know there will be numbers who, either in ignorance or perhaps an undeveloped or immature ethical basis to their actions, will choose the latter course of a free rider course. And that is unacceptable, and it will undermine the strength and integrity of the associations over time. It will mean that they're unable to continue to maintain the level of service. They will not have surplus to invest in increasing services available. Any of us who have ever been to a university, either as students, as teachers, as just as casual observers, will see the value of the associations that has been well proven over time. I'm very intrigued also by 229B of the bill that says no one may assert undue influence on a student or prospective student, either to join an association or to cease to be a member of an association or to choose not to be a member of an association. And I'd be really interested to know, what is the test for undue influence? How does one measure or determine what is undue influence? I suspect the students' associations will work very, very hard at the beginning of each academic year to capture students, to encourage and persuade them to pay the money to become fully paid up legitimate members and to enjoy the services with a clear conscience. I would love to hear an explanation from the drafter of the bill as to what actually constitutes undue influence. Students can be very activist, shall we say, very persuasive. They can use a wide range of means and inducements, shall we say, to encourage people come to join, particularly people at the beginning of their first year, because I would suspect that if you capture a student at the beginning of their first year, they'll very quickly discover the value of membership and will continue to be members of the association throughout their through their time as students. So what would be reasonable limits of inducements or persuasive techniques or attractions that a student body might offer to prospective members? Similarly, what would be undue influence in terms of those who might choose, for those remaining few on campus who choose not to go down that road? Kia ora.
I call Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Chair. This is the main part of this Act which Labor is definitely voting against. It's wrongly called the Education Freedom of Association Amendment Bill, but this part makes it absolutely clear that there's not going to be any freedom for the students to choose what to do about their association membership. In fact, this makes it compulsory for student associations to be voluntary. That's in fact what 229A does. It outlaws the right for student associations to choose to be voluntary. And why does it do this? Well, it seems to do this because there is no call on our student campuses in this country to actually have voluntary student association membership. Because if there was, there would be no need for this bill. If there was a call for student associations to be voluntary, then that would be happening right now. Because the proponents of this bill would be able to get more than 10% of students on a campus at any given time to actually call for a referendum to make it so. Because that's what the current law provides for. It actually says that yes, you can make a decision, or the student body can make a decision for student association membership to be voluntary. And they do it by just having 10% of the student body ask for such a referendum to be held. Now, the ACT Party has convinced the National Party to support an entirely new piece of legislation making it compulsory to be voluntary because their members on campuses, university campuses and polytechnic campuses up and down the country cannot organise 10% of the student body to say that they don't want to have compulsory student membership. They can't get that 10%. So why is it that the National Party is backing something that they can't even get 10% of the student body to even ask for? But it's worse than that, Mr Chair, because I sat on the Select Committee. I sat on the Select Committee in its journey around New Zealand listening to the submissions, and there were 4,800 submissions to this bill, Mr Chair. 98% of them were opposed to this bill. 48,000, well, you do the figures, 98% of them, oh, well, look, it's about 4,700, but, give or take a bit. So not only, Mr Chair, could they not get 10% of students at universities and polytechnics to say that they wanted these associations to be voluntary, but they also failed to listen when those 98% of submitters said, don't do this, it is wrong, it is a backwards piece of ideology. And it just goes to show how out of touch that government has become already in their first term, completely and utterly out of touch with New Zealanders, because here they were on a Select Committee hearing submission after submission saying this is the wrong thing to do, and they've completely and utterly ignored that. But they've also ignored the fact that not even 10% of the student body currently will actually get up and fight for this under the current law, which they can do right now. What is wrong with democracy? That's what I'd like to ask the National Party. That's a very good question from Tau Henare, because he knows all about this legislation. The legislation that exists right now he was the architect of that, and I applaud him for that. And now he's having it ripped apart for reasons of ideology and no other reason at all. It does show how joined at the hip the National Party has become to ACT ideology, that they are prepared to actually support this piece of legislation. Well, I don't know, Joe Goodhue seems to object to being called joined at the hip to ACT. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because she recognises that not only this piece of legislation but a whole range of ACT policies are completely and utterly unpopular in the New Zealand environment, and that would certainly be a very good call if Joe Goodhue did recognise that. But Mr Chair, I want to ask, what is the problem that we're trying to fix here? What is the problem that this law and this part of the law in particular aims to fix, Mr Chair? Mr Chair?
Ian Lees Galloway.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. As other members on this side of the House have said, we are absolutely opposed